Alrighty, so we've just looked at causation. Now we're looking at correlation, and this is a really fun. I think it's a fun topic to introduce because it's pretty basic, but it allows for some good thinking. So we looked at IVs, CVs, controls, and now we introduce the idea of correlations. And again, guiding question, just getting them to see how these things are related, the difference between these ideas of causation and correlation. If they don't pick up these concepts, if all students don't get these in the beginning in this unit, which realistically they won't, not all of them will, it's fine, you'll come back to it throughout. Here's where I like to introduce the crossword puzzle, because I've at least had a few lessons. They should know at least half the terms, and that's in the back of the workbook. You've got the answers in the activities files as well, and also in the teacher edition of the workbook is the answers. Then this is a really interesting TED Talk. If you just watch the 2 minutes here, and he talks about the difference in performance between people who use different types of web browsers, and what they find is that Chrome and Firefox outperform the others, and then see if they can explain why, right? And then after you've given them a chance to and shared their possible explanations, you can look at the explanation that Grant, the guy in the TED Talk, gives. And what he says, it's not your browser, it's not the browser that affects the personality or job performance. It's the fact that it's your personality. So the type of person you are, who's going to work hard and have higher job performance, is going to affect what browser you choose. So this is a good example of bidirectional ambiguity and a good time to explain that new concept. Here a bit of chalk and talk about correlations, what they mean. Real basic introduction. Now you can do this in two ways. This is a great website, Spurious Correlations. Last year I just gave students 5 minutes just to flick through them, but they didn't really seem that into it. But then when I project them as a class and we did it collectively, there seemed a bit more energy and a bit more reaction to it. So I like to project it as a class and talk about the Nicolas Cage and the pool drownings is just a funny one. So you can check those out. Then I think this is one of my best activities for looking at critical thinking, and it's not a bad one to do throughout the course. So there's a list of correlations, and they can be found in the blog post. Students read them, and then they have to come up with 2 possible explanations. So for example, let's look at the brain injury and aggression. All right, so this is correlated that there's the more damage in the prefrontal cortex is going to lead to higher acts of aggression, right? In particular, the prefrontal cortex. This is a study we look at in the criminology unit. And they have to come up with 2 possible explanations. So the first logical one is going to be causal. It's going to be, all right, damage to the brain causes aggression. Then the harder one is the alternative explanation. And so it could be something like, well, maybe more aggressive people who were more likely to get brain injury. And that's quite logical if you think about it. If you're a really aggressive person who's not afraid to commit and not afraid of combat, right, you're going to be charging into battle. You're going to be putting yourself in more situations where you're more likely to get an injured brain. The teacher workbook has sample answers to all of them, and there's other possible answers for sure. But I would give the students maybe 15, even 20 minutes just to read these with a partner and try and come up with 2 explanations for each of those results. A really good lesson in critical thinking. If they finish early, then they can go through and try to identify, are they positive correlations or are they negative correlations? All right, and then just maybe reflect at the end. What's the difference? All right, and they should, I wouldn't get them to worry about answering a guiding question for this one. They can in their notes if they like, but we just want to reflect and see if they get that. I would set for homework if they didn't finish it to finish that correlational activity and to read this lesson in the textbook. And then we get into the last lesson of the introduction unit, which is psychological theories.